Uh-oh.
Hey, I'm Ossie from 3 Monkeys Amps and 3 Monkeys Solderless, home of the world's best audio and DC solderless cable system. Stuff sounds great. Just so check us out on 3monkeysolderless.com. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to go into a little bit of an amp mod. A lot of people have been asking me, like, what is a line in? How do I put a line in on my amp? And what's this all about? So I think today what we're going to do is we're going to take that amp back there, that offset blockhead, and we're going to reinstall the line in that's already in there to show you how it's done. So stick around, and we're going to show you Okay, so here we are down at the table, and we're going to start with the line in mod. All right, so we got our piece of paper here and our magic marker and some stuff that we're going to look into. So to start off, I think it would be helpful to talk about exactly what I consider to be a line in when I talk about a line in these videos that you would want to plug, like, say, something like the Jose pedal into, or if you're doing amp slaving. And we're going to be talking about all this with the assumption that you are using a Marshall plexi style amp, like a JTM even, but just basically, you know, a 4-holer vintage style Marshall amp. If you've got a Fender, this kind of stuff can be applied to it, but a lot of amps work in different ways and have different places for different things. So for the purposes of this video, we're dealing with the Marshall circuits, the plexis, right? So it's helpful to know what the different stages are of the amplifier, right? So I like to say that there's the preamp and then the power amp. Okay, now the preamp, basically I consider everything up until the phase inverter. Okay, so basically in this amplifier you'll have V1, A, and B, which would be your two input channels that have the two corresponding volume controls on there. And then you're going to have the V2, A, and B, which is the cathode follower. Cathode F, which is where your tone stack is. Okay, make sure that's an A. And then your power amp I consider to be the phase inverter, which will be V3, A and B, right? And then the power tubes, right? The power tubes. And these would be, depending on your amp, you know, V4 through, you know, potentially V8, right? If you got a 100-watt. Okay? So this is what I consider to be the two parts of the amplifier, the preamp and the power amp. Now, a line in, as I like to say it, allows you to disconnect your preamp from your power amp and allow for the insertion of a signal into the power amp. All right, so your line in would really be in here. Right, so we're going to call here the line in, right? Let's even make it a little block. So it'll go this way, and then it will allow for an insertion here. Okay, so you can plug something into here, and it'll go directly into the power amp. If nothing's plugged into it, the preamp and the power amp will stay connected. Okay, and that is done with just a jack. Right, and this is what we would call a switching jack or a shorting jack. And this is basically what you would see in all the jacks on a vintage Marshall, right? Well, this one's plastic, has a plastic, you know, nut on it, not one of the chrome nuts, but it's the same basic thing. You'll see these for the 4 inputs, and you'll see this also for the speaker jacks. And we're going to use this for the line in. Okay, so let's talk about what this is and what it does. All right, that's the next thing to do. So for that, we've got a little bit of a cable, and we've got our multimeter with a continuity tester. So when we have continuity, meaning that there is signal flow or connection between, you get the signal, right? So here you got signals, right? Okay, so when the jack is in this position with nothing plugged into it, right, we have continuity here and here, but not here and not here. All right, so let's draw our little jack here, right? As we see it with the little nut around it. And we got our 4 plugs, or 4 terminals, right? Now, these are connected when there's nothing plugged into there. So let's see also in relation to your cable what these plugs correspond to. Now, obviously, if you guys have been working on amps, this is very rudimentary and it's going to bore you. But for purposes of complete description, we're going to go through it. This is the body of the plug or the ground, right? No connection. But you get a connection here. Interesting, right? So for the tip, which carries your signal, no connection, but a connection here. All right, so that means when there's something plugged into it, okay? We're going to draw it again. All right, so we had, when there's something in it, right? This particular one is live, let's say, is the word for it, and this one is live, right? And when you've got nothing plugged into it, these are connected. All right, so you can see already start to see how this is going to work, right? So the obvious thing to do would be to have this side connected to the power amp and have this side connected to your preamp. So that's basically what you want to do, right? So in a particular situation such as this, where we have our jack, once again, and our 4 connectors, right? So being that this is ground, we don't really have to worry about much switching. We're just going to connect the 2 and bring it to chassis ground, someplace quiet. Don't ground it someplace where there might be a lot of hash, like early on in the amp. You can ground it even where you really close to the plug, like on a power tube cathode ground point, or at the star ground of your amp up by the inputs. All those places would be fine. And then you've got these 2 left over, right? This one's going to go to the preamp, right? And that's the Marshall preamp. This side here is going to go to the phase inverter, right? We'll spell it all out instead of just using PI. Okay? So as you can see, when nothing's plugged into it, the power amp and the the power amp and the preamp are going to be connected, right? And when you plug something into it, it's no longer connected, and what's plugged into it goes into the phase inverter or the power amp. Okay? So that's pretty much how you want to work it, all right? So the next thing you're going to want to do is we're going to want to look at the Marshall circuit itself, right? Where are these things? So I'm going to draw that out really quickly for you. So let's go up to the controls, right? You're going to have, let's say, your bass, your middle, and your treble control up here. B, M, T, okay? And then here's going to be like your circuit card with all your stuff on it. We're going to draw in the phase inverter real quickly for you. So you got this guy right here, right? And this guy right here. Okay, so you got like a capacitor there, got a capacitor there, got a resistor here, resistor here, another resistor here, resistor here, and you got resistor here, another resistor here, another one here, and then you got another one like there. And you got this capacitor that goes up that way, and you got a capacitor that goes in that way. All right, and then this is connected basically to V3, right? So you're going to have your 2 triodes there, right? So you got your plate, you're going to have your plate, you're going to have your grid, and your grid, and you're going to have your combined cathode, right? So there's your phase inverter. This right here, that's the input of the phase inverter, okay? This point right here, and it is connected up to the treble pot, all right? Now on the treble pot, there's 3 lugs. The middle lug is the output of the tone stack. So you're gonna see a wire going from there right over to a capacitor, a 0.02 capacitor on the board, all right, which is the entrance to the phase inverter. I hope that makes sense for everybody. You have your bass, your middle, your treble. The middle lug of the treble control has a wire going to it that goes to the circuit board. On that circuit board at that contact point is a .02, which then connects to this little circuit right here and into the grid of the phase inverter. And that is the beginning of your power amp. This is where we want to insert our jack. So what we're going to do basically is we're going to take our jack, and I like to put it on the back of the amplifier, right? So you're going to have it look like that, right? Because now we're upside down, right? This is the front of the amp, this is the back of the amplifier, right? So in this case, you're going to have the phase inverter basically connected on this side, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to break the connection here, all right? And then we're going to, let me get a red marker so that you can see what the mod is, right? Because the mod's going to be in red. So you're going to basically remove this wire. That's what I like to do anyway. And put it away and store it for yourself. And then you're going to take a wire. And if it's a long run, I recommend that you use a shielded wire. That'll be a lower noise. And you're going to run this right over to here. Okay, so that makes sense to you right there. And then you're going to run another wire, which I prefer also to be a shielded wire, right to the point where the treble pot used to control, or used to go to. All right? And then you're going to take these two guys here, and you're going to ground them. And you're going to ground them at a socket. Now, I'm going to bring down the amplifier, and we're going to actually go through looking at the parts, showing you, and putting in the wires, and that kind of thing, so you can get an idea. But this is the basic circuit. You're going to use two shielded wires, and you can ground the shield here, right? So they share a common ground point, right? And then you could just run the leads to the respective places. One to the treble pot at the middle, and the other one up to the entrance of the phase inverter at the .02. Okay, so I'm going to go and I'm going to grab that offset looking head up there, that blockhead that already has a line in, and we're going to show you how that all worked out. All right, so hang on and we'll be right back. And we have what is pretty much a plexi circuit, so anybody that's familiar with the guts of that style amplifier would pretty much be able to recognize this. I mean, I've modded this one a little bit in the preamp, so don't worry about it. That for those purposes. But what we were talking about before with the diagram here, right? So we wanted to find the treble pot, right? So we got presence, bass, middle, treble. Okay? So we got the middle lug, 1, 2, 3 lugs, the middle lug of the treble pot. We have a wire. And then right here is the phase inverter, what I had drawn before, right? With the little tri-legged resistor network here, capacitors, right? So this is the entrance right here to the phase inverter, okay? Now on the back I have my jacks. We're going to use this jack right here. This one is just in there right now. It could be used for something at a later point, but we're just going to be using this jack here. It's a typical Marshall plastic jack. All right, so what we're going to do per the diagram, right, is we're going to attach from the treble, from the middle of the treble, we're going to go to right here, to this lug, all right, which is the bottom one, so to speak, the one furthest away, and the one to the right when you have the chassis orientated in this way. So I'm just going to go ahead and solder this in place. Now I'm using just regular old cable right now. Here, let me get this. I don't have my eyeglasses on, so I can't really see very well what I'm doing here. Okay, there we go. Hold it in place until the solder sets, cools. All right, so we got that in place, and then here is the entrance to the phase inverter, right, to that .02. This wire will go to the other remaining lug at the bottom, right? There we go. Hold it in place till it cools. There we go. And I'm not using, like I said, I'm not using shielded wire. Now you can use shielded wire, and I would actually recommend it, but for my purposes, I didn't really find the benefit in this amplifier for it, so I just went with plain old, top coat tin 22 gauge? Yeah, 22 gauge top coat tin PVC coated wire. Now the grounding point that I used is, where is the ground point? Okay, so the ground point is actually at the cathode of the power tubes. There's a little ground connection here to the chassis, so I utilize that. So now we've got to just sort of see how it all works, right? Because we wanted to talk about that as well. So I've got a cable right here, and when there's nothing plugged into this jack, the connection, right, continuity meter we've got going here, right? So when there's nothing plugged into this jack, the treble, middle of the treble pot is connected to the phase inverter. So it's operating as normal. Now if we take a plug, right, and we've got our solderless plug here, and plug into it, right, now you'll see that it's broken. That connection is no longer there, right? And the connection is now the tip of the jack that's plugged into the insertion point there. So that's really all there is to it. So whatever you plug into this is going to go into the phase inverter, and when you unplug it, your amp is going to function as it normally will. So that's really all there is to it. I mean, it's a very simple mod. It's something that you can do. I would absolutely recommend that you have this done by a tech if you're not familiar with high voltages or working around an amplifier safely, because there are voltages in this amp that will knock you on the floor. And if you're lucky enough to get back up, thank your lucky stars, because sometimes you don't get back up again. So anyway, I think that's good for right now. This is how you do it, and I'll see you guys next time.